say absence makes the heart grow fonder, or is it absence makes the heart wander? Either of those could really be the... Like, we're going to work it out now in this segment.
Yes, we are. In Australia, up to 1 in 10 couples don't live with their partner, which leaves a lot of people with a pseudo-solo status.
That was a great band, wasn't it?
That was. What is the secret to making a long-distance relationship last, and what can we learn from those who do make it work?
Look, for more on this, we're joined by sexologist Dr. Nikki Goldstein. Good morning to you.
Good morning.
Welcome back to the show. Hey, jealousy is one of the biggest hurdles for long-distance couples, so how do you keep that sort of jealousy in check?
Well, I think the first thing is you have to be honest about where your headspace is at. Because you're not with them physically, you need to be able to say, feeling a bit funny, I'm feeling a bit jealous, but you also need to own that emotion, because when we start accusing, you make me feel jealous instead of I feel jealous, it's harder to communicate and problem solve around that issue. I think we also need to look at why that jealousy exists, because often that's an indication that there's something else going on in the relationship. So it may not be because your partner posted a photo with another woman, but maybe you're not getting enough attention and affection over that communication.
But what do you do if you say to your partner, listen, I am a little bit jealous about that woman at your work, and you're of course not there, so you can't see, and the imagination makes you kind of go a little bit crazier, so I've heard. What should your partner say to you to kind of appease you and make you feel safe or comfortable or not worried?
Well, this is where it works out, what else is going on in the relationship. Because if you're saying, you being with that person at work makes me feel a bit jealous, maybe the issue is that you're not getting enough attention and affection. It could have nothing to do with how many times he reassures you this is just a friend. You really need something more. Maybe you need more phone calls. Maybe you need more FaceTime. Maybe you need more weekends when you're actually together. So I think that's a real key when we come to problem solving these situations. What else can you do besides verbally reassure that person that everything's fine to actually make that first person feel secure in the relationship?
Yeah. We occasionally hear about some long-distance relationships actually being better and stronger and lasting longer than if people are together. What do we take from that?
Well, I think the first one is communication, because when you're living together, you can live together but not really communicate. So that's one thing that we can take from long-distance relationships. They have to communicate because they're not waking up next to each other in the bed. I think also problem solving. They do have to problem solve these issues rather than sweep them under the rug, because distance, I think, does make things worse. I also think that these couples are really good at showing intimacy in different ways. So because they physically can't be together, they have to explore how can you show intimacy without being there to touch and hug and give someone an embrace when they've had a hard day.
How does technology work in that case? Does technology help because you can now do FaceTime and you can see each other?
Ashley Madison.
Well, let's know. Well, we're not talking about that type of relationship.
Sorry, I sneezed. I don't know.
I didn't hear a word you said. But I think it's one of those things that communication can be really good for long-distance relationships, but then you need to be careful because it can hinder them. And when we put our relationship out there online, we do open it up to other people. And that may just be, having intimate conversations with someone else that isn't our partner. I also think we open them up to judgment. So when we look at the relfie, the relationship selfie, when you're posting your relationship and all your intimate details, it does tend to open up for other people to jump on the bandwagon, have their say. It's really up to you and your partner, not for the rest of the world to actually see what's going on, how much you love each other and what you're doing on that weekend.
Okay, so modern technology can either help or hinder. What about people considering a long-term relationship? What are sort of some of the ground rules that should be in place before you leave on that jet plane?
Well, I think this is for everybody in general when we look at relationships, but you need to make up your own ground rules, but you also need to communicate around those and revise them. So you might work out how many times that you're going to call, what weekends that you're going to see each other, and then you think, this isn't working for us. Let's actually revise that. And that's what comes down to expectations. What expectations do you have for this long-distance relationship, which is another thing that people that aren't in long-distance relationships can learn as well.
How do you transition though? Sometimes I know, for example, if I've been away on a work trip for 2 weeks, it's actually quite strange to come back together. So how do you sort of transition in quite quickly from being away together? together.
Well,
All those news people in the house when you get home.
That's right.
but I think with this one, it's okay to feel a bit funny. I think there's a certain level of guilt because people then come back together and they think, I've missed my partner. I should be feeling really good right now. But it does feel strange because you get so used to missing them and you get used to the distance. So I think if you are transitioning from a long distance relationship to in the flesh, you need to be aware of that, but also still have your own life and your space, because then it's nice to talk to your partner about what's going on in your day, and it's still nice to miss them. Don't feel like you have to be together all the time just because you're now in the same city.
Do you do what I do when I get home from a long trip?
What do you do?
Because in the hotel room we just leave the towel on the floor.
You do that at home too.
I just pick up the phone and go, I would like
Sylvie, club sandwich, please, Dal. Large fries.
What are you talking about when you get home? Don't you do that in general?
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Nikki.
Goodbye.
We'll be back with more of the morning show in a moment.